Viewers, welcome to this fascinating odyssey of history. We are going to reveal to you a past history event of one of the biggest empires the world has ever seen, called the Roman Empire. Today, the question that has remained in many historians' minds for centuries will be debated. Was it greed that was predominantly responsible for the final collapse of this tremendous empire? Join me on this fascinating history on the rise and fall of the Roman Empire, the glorious rise of Rome. It is said that in the 8th century BCE of a legend named Romulus and Remus, they were twins. According to the myth, twin brothers abandoned and raised by a she-wolf founded the city of Rome. The geographical location of the city near the Tiber River made it possible for the city to develop as an important center for trade and commerce. In course of time, the city of Rome advanced and expanded itself from a small settlement to a community, later on a region, and finally to an empire that once encompassed the entire Mediterranean basin. Already by the 3rd century BC, the city of Rome was acknowledged as a considerable power, able to project herself militarily, and began to demonstrate this fact in the Punic Wars with Carthage. It was the reverse of Hannibal, and burning down of Carthage fatally established the hegemony of Rome in that region. These represented the times that changed the Republic into an empire, extending from Britain in the west to Syria in the east. The Golden Age and the seeds of greed. Expansion brought much wealth to Rome, hence a period aptly considered by many the Pax Romana, or Roman peace. The building of great architecture, the greater development of arts and culture, and building an expansive infrastructure were hallmarks of this Golden Age. Beneath that veneer of prosperity lay the seeds of greed and corruption. This produced the huge economic disparities between a few rich and many poor. Because of such awful living conditions, the poorer people of Rome had to suffer a lot, whereas the elite lived a life full of luxuries. The large landowners usually bought the small farms, and the farmers migrated to the cities in search of jobs. An excessive population in a zone without ample chances for jobs has resulted in the growth of social problems. Corruption in politics and the lack of political will. The problem of greed permeated the political environment of Rome. It was a sad development that even the Roman Senate, an institution that once epitomized public virtue, became a cesspool of intrigue and nefarious dealings. Senators made their fortune through the abuses of provincial governments and public office for personal gain. This state of affairs prompted the brothers Tiberius and Gaius Gracchi to attempt land reforms aimed at addressing wealth inequality. However, they faced violent opposition from the Roman elite, who were very greedy. The generals were no better. Men like Marius and Sulla utilized their successes on the battlefield to control political power in Rome. The rise of Julius Caesar best exemplified this phenomenon. A brilliant military officer, he conquered Gaul and amassed enormous wealth, as well as a loyal body of troops. His ambition drove him to lead his army across the Rubicon River against the authority of the Senate, an act that virtually declared war upon the Republic. Caesar's eventual assassination underlined how personally destructive ambition and greed were to Rome's political stability, economic disparities, and social unrest. This sudden inflow of such a high amount of wealth from conquered territories created a class comprising the most wealthy elites, whereas a common Roman citizen had to face economic hardship. The latifundia replaced small farms as large estates started to be held by rich landowners that led to the displacement of the peasant farmers. These people who got displaced came to the cities, leading to further overcrowding and unemployment. This was further fed by an economic disparity that had the struggling urban poor pitted against the elite, who were indulging in lives of opulence. The games of gladiators and sumptuous banquets started to characterize the decadence of Rome. A policy of bread and circuses served as a temporary mask for this discontent. It was supposed to keep the masses satisfied. The decline of civic virtue. Thus, civic virtue was being progressively undermined by an insatiable greed and corruption at its core. The ancestral habits that guided moral behavior, the Roman virtue of mos maiorum, broke down into self-serving interest and moral disintegration. Public offices became bought and sold in far too many cases, and loyalty to the state often gave way to personal ambition. The moral slump was promptly reflected in the emperors too. While some of them, such as Augustus, tried to restore discipline and stability, others, like Nero and Caligula, came to personify the excess and vice that characterized the last years of the empire. The extravagance of Nero, who built the Domus Aurea, had siphoned off the treasury of the state, just as the destructive power of uncontrollable avarice did. Military overreach and administrative challenges. This huge empire testified to the Roman military's greatness, but brought forth significant administrative problems at the same time. A huge territory like this was hard to handle effectively. Corruption among the provincial governors made things worse. Most of them were interested in personal enrichment rather than taking care of the provinces entrusted to their governance, and this became a source of great discontent. Military overreach also overstretched Rome's resources. The vast network of roads, fortifications, and garrisons required immense financial expenditure to maintain. The need for constant defense along its borders against Germanic tribes and the Parthians overextended Rome's military. While resources were being diverted to meet these external threats, internal stability was sacrificed. Barbarian invasions and the final blow. During the 3rd and 4th centuries CE, Rome began to face greater external pressures. Barbarian invasions began to be a constant threat, and such groups included the Visigoths, Vandals, and Huns who tested Roman borders. Internal divisions and decades of corruption and mismanagement had weakened the empire's ability to respond to these threats. The Visigoths, under Alaric, succeeded in doing just that in 410 CE, a symbolic blow, which really drove home the reality of the empire's weakness. This was a turn in the decline of the Western Roman Empire. Further invasions by various tribes continued to weaken Rome until its end with the deposition of the last Roman emperor, Romulus Augustulus, in 476 CE. The role of greed in the fall of Rome. Was this a singular cause of the Roman Empire's fall? Definitely not, because its collapse was a very involved process, really influenced by a number of factors: political instability, economic problems, military overreach, and external pressures. Nevertheless, greed and corruption surely did their part to worsen all these problems. The unquenchable thirst that had taken hold of the Roman soul for riches and power began to sap the foundational structures of society. It ruined civic virtue, dislocated the balance of politics, and sharpened economic inequalities. Personal gain tended too often to overshadow the common good in decision-making processes, which had the ultimate effect of undermining stability and resilience in the empire. Dear audience, this exploration of existence and expiration is almost over. But one thing is clear: it was greed that contributed massively to the downfall. Not that this was the only reason for the implosion, but the creeping evil of greed and corruption corrupted and corroded every strata of Roman society, eating away at its strengths and expediting its fall from power. Rome's history constitutes a timeless reminder of the risks of untrammeled avarice and of civic virtue. It beckons us to a reflection of values at the foundation of our societies, and on the need for leaders whose vision looks toward the common good, rather than toward the service of self-aggrandizement. History has given us lessons as pertinent as we make our way through the complexities of our time.